think there is a degree to which VC is a bit of a Ponzi scheme. It's like looking at the stock market. One group of companies who are massively overvalued, and another group of companies that no one seems to want to touch, that are massively undervalued. And you're like, why are you not investing in the great opportunities here? You don't want to be the company with 150 graphs on your dashboard. It's like, no. I want to get you as a company to a point where you can tell me your customer acquisition cost to customer lifetime value and whether you have product market fit. My job was so dumb. You could train a computer to do my job. And it's like, yeah. Like, oh, let's train a computer to drill oil wells.
Welcome to the Generation Hustle Podcast, a show that explores the world of business, entrepreneurship, and culture, all centered around the millennial. I'm your co-host Sherison, alongside my good friend Amin, and this week we're back with another episode from the world of tech. Episode 54 is with Phillip Gales, CEO and founder of Inate.ai. Inate.ai automates the analysis of growth stage startups using artificial intelligence to facilitate venture capital due diligence. With a master's in engineering from the University of Cambridge and an MBA from Harvard, Phillip is a serial entrepreneur focused on applying machine learning algorithms to financial portfolio optimization. We talked to Phillip about his journey from the oil and gas industry to machine learning. He details the importance of incubators such as Y-Combinator and the DMZ, growing startups with data-driven insights, and the current state of venture capital. This was an incredibly loaded conversation with so many insightful learnings that we hope you enjoy.
So thanks, Phillip, for coming on board today. We have an exciting, series of discussions to have around, the VC space, what you're kind of working on around data and VC, and also kind of your journey through VC and, the startups that you've worked with and, your personal story with tech as well. So I think it's going to be a unique chat and our listeners are definitely going to benefit from it.
I certainly hope so, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here on a beautiful sunny Friday afternoon.
Yeah. Before I get into this, it seems like you have a British accent. So, are you originally from England?
Yeah. My accent doesn't give this away, but I'm actually a northerner. I come from a little town in the north called Lancaster. Most people know from the Lancaster Bombers. And what can I say? It's grim up north in the UK. No, sorry. Lancaster is a beautiful city. You want to go visit. It's absolutely beautiful. My goodness, it rains continuously. So, I moved away from Lancaster when I was 18. I actually left the UK when I was 21, and I've not looked back since. It's a beautiful country. It's amazing. I love the history. I love going back to visit. But you know what? The US for opportunity is amazing. Canada for lifestyle. There's many reasons why I'm here.
Yeah, no, I always ask because, I always get intrigued because I have a lot of family in the UK, particularly around the London area. And I'm usually fond about it for like a week or two. And then I get bored because there's not really much to do out there unless you maybe go up north and explore like the castles and stuff in Scotland. That's my personal feeling. I don't know. I just get, there's a lot of nice parties and stuff to do out there. But beyond that, I think, England's kind of getting boring for me. I've been there like 5 or 6 times now.
And I forget which writer it is, but famous British writer said that when a man is bored of London, he is bored of life.
Oh, yeah.
So I question that, man. Like,
maybe I've just haven't experienced the right things or I do the same things too many times. Yeah. That might be the case. But I digress from our little British travels there. But let's get right into it. So, you've been an individual fascinated with the startup space, given your experience of building a company, which was actually funded by Y-Combinator. So I'd obviously love to hear about that. And you've also helped raise money for a lot of local tech startups in Toronto, and now you're mentoring as well on the side. So can you kind of walk us through your story from your early days, from actually going from being an engineer, to how you got started into tech, and what has made you successful throughout the years in these various roles in various industries?
Oh, God. The first question of what's made me successful is frankly stupidity and brute ignorance. But let's expand on that one. So I was really fortunate to go to university in Cambridge. I studied electrical engineering. I ended up specializing in machine learning, which at the time was sort of, it was a bit of a niche, really. It was before the super cool like Jeff Hinton stuff. It was really like, neural networks, and you could do some stuff with them. So I ended up doing a master's thesis analyzing stock market prices using AI.
Okay.
It was like super cool. It was
Yeah.
like an interesting area, but actually it didn't excite me. And I spent most of my weekends and certainly most of my summers actually on deployment with the Royal Navy. And in a completely different world, you would be talking to Captain, or Lieutenant Commander, probably Lieutenant Commander Gales, Royal Navy. And I failed my medical, and being a stupid, foolhardy 21-year-old, I was like, look, I want to do something exciting, and I want to do something interesting, and I'm not too worried about danger. I want to actually do something. And I found myself in the oil and gas industry. It's like probably the exact polar opposite of like startups. We're not talking budgets and hacking things together and writing code. We're talking like I literally lived and worked on oil rigs. I had $100 million budgets to drill deep water exploration wells, and it was amazing. I used to fly out to oil rigs in Nigeria. I drilled the first exploration well in Pakistan, or in offshore Pakistan. I worked in Egypt. I worked in Argentina. It was amazing. It was just great fun, and the work was brilliant because every single day it was exciting and new and challenging. There was something happening. It was a rig of about 130 people. If you're familiar with the BP Deepwater Horizon, I worked on a lot of Deepwater Horizon sister rigs. So I worked on Deepwater Pathfinder, worked on Deepwater Discovery, and every morning you'd wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. and something different would have happened. You'd have to get equipment in, something would happen drilling downhole. I love that. I love the pace of operations. So that's when I first learned about operations, and I love doing this, managing people. But I hated the oil and gas industry. And I hated the fact I had no friends or family. And so I hatched a cunning plan to go to business school to meet my wife. I'm very fortunate I got into Harvard. I went through their MBA program. I met my wonderful wife, Jill, been married now for 7 years. And at the end of that, I had this weird choice of I can either go and continue drilling oil wells, managing drilling operations in Chengdu in China, or I can figure something out to live in New York with my wife. I was like, Chengdu, New York.
Yeah.
And as I say, just repeated brutal stupidity on my side. Should I earn nice amounts of money in a good, stable job, or should I try and figure something out the other way? And I jumped into New York, and I jumped into the New York startup scene. A ton of dumb ideas. So many dumb ideas. Sorry, of my own. There's many dumb ideas. So many dumb ideas of my own. But I ended up meeting my co-founder, and we both had this oil and gas background. It's like, dude, there's a ton of data in oil and gas. I'm like, yeah. I don't use it. I was like, yeah. I was like, and you could just my job was so dumb. You could train a computer to do my job. I was like, yeah. I'm like, oh, let's train a computer to drill oil wells. And so that was the genesis of drilling analytics. We got data on 50,000 oil wells from North Dakota. I built a neural network that analyzed them, and we sold a product to drilling companies that said, look, if you're drilling here, here are all the wells around it, here's where to place it, how to drill, how to frack, etc. If you can imagine, absolutely amazing as an idea. Tons of money in that. Went through Y-Combinator with it. Absolutely brilliant. Oil price crashed. I'll leave you to put together the rest.
Okay, yeah.
But that was when I started to realize that the great thing about tech is you can take these old-fashioned industries that have a ton of really, how can I put it, antiquated, unscalable ways of doing stuff. And there's enormous opportunities there.
Yeah.
You can build stuff, you can use machine learning, you can use AI, there's a ton of data, and it's great to disrupt. I ended up working for a couple of other companies. I was CFO of one, took it public. I ended up becoming the VP of operations at Chef Hero. They're now rebranded as Notch. And I love doing the operations stuff. I love the data. And that really segues into the sort of startup data area. I'm very fortunate to have a 2.5-year-old daughter. In about 2 hours' time, I'm going to go and take her, and we go for Friday burger and fries.
Nice.
It's wonderful. But when she was born, I decided I wanted to take some paternity leave and get to know her and figure out what the next thing was. And so I ended up going around a ton of different incubators and accelerators. Went out to Velocity, Communitech, spoke at the DMZ, and that's how I've ended up, you know, mentoring and being in
Yeah.
contact with literally hundreds of startups. I'm gonna show off. Forgive me. I love doing this. These are notes,
Wow.
reams of notes of startups, and that's
Yeah.
you should see what my microphone is set on, and just helping startups understand their data and their operations.
Yeah.
Um, and that turned into the realization that startups have tons of data.
Yeah.
They need help understanding it. They need help raising money.
Right.
And that's why 2 years ago I started Inate.ai.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And before we get into that, I actually want to talk about data itself
Hmm.
because it's an area that fascinates a lot. But it's funny because I have a couple friends in data science, and they talk about how they have ample amount of data, but they really can't construct it in a way sometimes to be actually useful to make decisions. And so what is your kind of thought process when you mentor a startup or you're talking to a few startups in terms of building out a optimal data environment so you can actually pull data that makes sense or aggregate data to make sense?
Yeah. Um, I find one of the biggest challenges when we talk about data is not the availability of it and it's not the analysis. Those are challenging, but it really is actually getting some insight out of the data. You get that moment where people are like, okay, that's a great graph, but so what? Like, tell me what this means. Like, tell me what I can actually do with this. And I find there tends to be tremendous disconnects between typically people in operations or people who are actually doing the day-to-day sales or the CEO, and then the data scientists and the data team. Um, I had one company, and they, bless them, wonderful company. They presented me with their dashboard. They spent weeks working on this, and it had 150 graphs on it. And I just went like, "What?
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing me here? What is this? I'm the data person. I can't understand the thing that I'm looking at." And I've seen other companies that have the simplest, most rubbish, Google Doc dashboard with 3 metrics, but they know exactly what those metrics are doing. And I tend to tell people, simple rules of thumb: measure as much as possible. There's too many times when I've looked back in data and I'm like, why in the hell didn't I measure that or
Yeah.
it? But present as little as possible in the most valuable, meaningful way possible. Um, I don't believe that we have problems with data. We have problems with analyzing it and getting good insights out of it.
Right.
That's the area I end up having to help a lot.
Yeah, and I've seen it personally working in finance sometimes. Talking to a lot of startups here and there. Whenever they have like 50 KPIs that they want to present, and for me, it just doesn't make sense. They don't understand kind of when I talk to them, say, what are your core drivers that are leading to new business or driving revenue, increasing, decreasing costs. This is just like finance lens wise, but what are those core drivers? And those are the only KPIs you really need to focus in on. The other ones are just like secondary, maybe value add down the line.
Yep.
So what are your thought process on over analyzing and wasting time on things that don't add value?
It's just it is just such a waste of time. And the problem is that I think there's a lot of data snake oil salesmen. I've got to be clear about this. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to sell products and they're trying to sell increasingly complex products. When I look at what a VC really wants to be looking at, it's relatively simple stuff. It's growth, it's revenue, it's do customers like your product? Do you have product market fit? So it goes into churn. If you're doing proper churn analysis, then it's going into what retention curves look like. And then the real thing I dig down to is customer acquisition cost to customer lifetime value, your unit economics. Like at the end of the day, if you have product market fit and you have good unit economics, that is everything. I can take a company that has no money and a very small sales team, but amazing product market fit, and I can kill it with that company. I can absolutely dominate. But if you give me a company that's got money in the bank and a rubbish product without product market fit that doesn't know its unit economics, that has bad customer acquisition cost, no, you're dead in the water. I've got to get back to those. So it's extremely simplistic, but I always go to customer acquisition cost to lifetime value, just as the test in a business.
Yeah, and I think we'll go into this right now. Is one of those important things that VCs assess is that customer acquisition cost to lifetime value. But before we get into all the metrics and how to raise money, let's talk about the VC industry as a whole. So we had a discussion over email a little earlier, and you mentioned that the VC industry overall is kind of unfair, unclear, and biased. Hence, why you're kind of trying to build something towards making it easier for startups. So could you kind of help us understand first the business model of a VC and what its primary objective is?
I will give you, in my humble opinion, the business model of a VC. But this comes with a caveat that I am neither rich enough, nor brave enough, nor experienced enough to be a VC. I've got to be super clear about that. I do not make angel investments. I do not put my money where my mouth is. And so these are the experience of a startup founder that's helped a lot of people talking to and raising money with VCs. But fundamentally, I think there is a degree to which VC is a bit of a Ponzi scheme. And don't get me wrong, when I'm talking about VCs, some of my favorite friends of VCs, some people I most admire and look up to are VCs. But there are just structural issues within it as an industry that distort it and cause big problems. One of them is the time to figure out if an investment is any good. How long does it take for a company to actually come to fruition, an IPO? Minimum 7 years. What's the length of a VC fund? 5 years. By the time you've got the capital in, by the time you've deployed it, 3 years before you have to wrap it up. So you're in a weird place, whereas a VC, yeah, of course you want to make the best investments. You're aligned with that. The 2 and 20 business model aligns you to wanting to get the largest exit possible. But there's also a degree to which you're actually mostly lining up for your next fund. So what do you want? You want to be in the hot deals, the exciting deals, so that you can prove that you found good stuff, so you can raise more money for your next fund, so you can deploy that. So it's not 100% correlated with the best interests of the startups and growing them. It's correlated with how do I get more money in for my next fund. And I find that really distorting.
Right. I was going to mention Chamath. Chamath, sorry. I don't know how to say his last name, so I apologize. He mentioned this during an interview where, how VC1 would, invest in a company and then, let's just say it's a Series A, and they pitch and say, hey, our IRR was 20%, blah, blah, blah. Then they get their buddies who are down the street, who's another VC, saying, hey, we're doing a Series B, so, invest into them. And by then, we'll get into Series C, Series D, whatever it is. And that's when they redeploy that new fund that they have to look for. And they say, here's our history of, IRR, and, look at these funds. And a lot of people don't realize, VCs, typically one or two are companies are their unicorns driving the entire fund, and the rest of the companies are literally dying. And I think that's something that more and more founders and individuals outside the industry need to start understanding.
And I think you've hit on two really interesting and very different points there. I don't know enough about the late stage, just to be clear. I do not know enough about the late stage, but I think we're seeing an enormous tech bubble. And where it comes from, in my opinion, is we've got a ton of companies whose fundamental unit economics and fundamental financials do not make sense to support the valuation they've got.
Yeah.
And there's the obvious ones, there's the WeWorks, and I love businesses with network effects, and I will justify a huge valuation for Uber. But Uber, can you imagine these companies going public and actually having the valuation that they're sat at now? So suddenly you've got this VC hot potato. You've got a cool company that's growing well, the valuation has to go up. You want to keep that valuation going up because you want to exit well as a VC. So you've got to pass it on to the next person. You've got to pass it on to the next person at an inflated valuation so that you can make money out of it. And then suddenly you've got somebody holding this hot potato, SoftBank, who is potentially, who is sat there going, well, what do I actually have here? Do I have an amazing network effect business that absolutely dominates this thing? Or do I have a ton of hype? And I think there's a lot of hype. I think it's a mixture, but there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the most recent thing that I can think of related to that is Clubhouse. And I think the valuation is 100 million pre-revenue, something like that. And it's just like, from a finance lens, I just wonder what's going on in terms of, these companies. I get the idea of network effects. It can scale. There's a founder that, has built a business before. I understand that. But you can clearly see now that the product isn't what people intended it to be. And there's been a huge drop off, and retention on the platform has been like little to none since it first started. And so I don't know how that you can now support $100 million valuation. I'm not sure if it's going to be a future down round, or they're going to story tell into a way to raise the valuation to like 400 million, God knows what. But,
we're actually entering an interesting place of why product market fit is so damn important. And actually measuring product market fit. And I think the problem is that there's a lot of unhelpful stuff going around about product market fit. These comments from Mark Andreessen about, when you have product market fit, you'll know it. Well, that's brilliant, but trust me, if you don't have product market fit, you don't know it. And the problem with not having product market fit is you end up with companies getting a ton of investment that don't have product market fit, potentially like Clubhouse. And then people realize that they don't get the value out of it they wanted. It's not solving their problem. A ton of money goes into it, and it gets pissed away. And I've experienced growing companies where you don't have product market fit, and it's extremely painful. And the problem is that understanding from data if you have product market fit is quite complicated. Let me rephrase that. I tasked my data scientist at my last company with the SQL query required to really analyze product market fit, and he couldn't do it. We ended up having to resort to Python and a Jupyter notebook.
Okay.
So we're not talking about simplistic stuff that most startups can access. Yet we're talking about the fundamentals of, is your business going to grow, or are you going to actually plateau and then hit hit a cliff?
Yeah. And so what would you actually describe product market fit as? Because I think there's so many definitions out there, and a lot of individuals get confused as to what it is. Even I get confused. I don't know my own definition of what product market fit is. So like, as someone who's, been there, built his own company, helped, different startups at different stages, what's your definition of product market fit, and attaching almost even a data lens to it as well?
Yeah. So I've got a very, very simple answer for that, but let me start off with what it isn't. It isn't when customers want to buy your product. That's just good sales. That's good marketing. As I told one VC when I was young and naive, I've got 4 customers that like my product and they tell me I've got product market fit, so I must have product market fit. It's not that. I would say to virtually any startup, if you think you have product market fit, you almost certainly don't. I'm fortunate enough that I've read a lot and digest a lot of information. Brian Balfour speaks a lot about analytical means to determine product market fit, and so I'm just going to recount his perspective. Product market fit is when you have a core group of customers who just keep using the product, and the best way of analyzing that is to do cohorted retention analysis. So take your customers, find out when they started using a product. Maybe you had 100 of them that signed up 6 months ago. Of those, how many are still with you 3 months later? How many of them are still with you 4 months, 5 months later? And analyze the shape of that curve. And that is the best indicator of product market fit. It's complicated. It's not easy to do, but I've seen companies that you look at their churn data and it looks terrible, but they've got a core of 10% of their customers who have serious product market fit.
Yeah.
We just go and we double down on those and they grow like mad. And I've seen other companies where their customers are just churning continuously.
Right.
They're just like, I didn't get much money out of this.
Yeah. And those companies tend to have higher customer acquisition costs, which that's why they go for funding, because they have to fund the entire amount, right?
And then you end up in a really, really bad vicious cycle where it's like you raise $5 million for growth. You don't have product market fit. So you put $2.5 million of that into sales, which you then basically piss away on acquiring customers who then churn.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, I'll raise $5 million and put $5 million into getting to product market fit, which of course VCs don't want to hear because they want to hear about growth, or I just won't raise and I'll get to product market fit, which a founder often doesn't want to do because they want to raise money. They want to have that, TechCrunch article. They want to be able to pay themselves, first of all. it's tough. It's
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, right? So VC has its own morale in terms of, they have to obviously please investors. You have the CEO who obviously wants to get paid, get notoriety through the company that they're building. And obviously each round they raise more notoriety. But coming from the finance lens, I know it's generally not because your company is valued at such. You're using it to kind of scale and fund the expenses really because your run rate's running out. And then obviously you have your employees and stuff who get maybe confused at the sidelines in terms of what's this money actually being used for. And it's too late sometimes, I feel, for some startups where, hey, we raised $10 million, but we don't know how it's going to be deployed effectively. It's just like, let's just raise and we'll figure it out after. And I think that's what causes a lot of issues, and like this whole perpetual cycle in the tech industry. That's maybe why we're seeing such inflated valuations and stuff like that, and a lot of money flowing into the industry. Like, it's a crazy amount of dollars being thrown out there.
I think that's you're touching on a point around fundraising and when to fundraise, and it's very easy for me to say this. I'm in a very fortunate circumstance, but VC money is for growth. If you do not have product market fit sorted out and CAC 12 TB and a good sales funnel, please, founders, don't take it. Please forgive me, VCs.
Yeah.
I'm doing you a favor here. Like, VC money is to grow. You need to figure out how to bootstrap, how to make some money from consulting, figure out what is going on, but fundamentally get to a point where you know your customer, you know exactly what you're selling, you know how to sell it, and then go and raise a ton of money.
Yep.
Don't raise money before you've got product market fit. Don't go raise money until you've figured out what the hell you're selling and to whom and how. Because that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. And so that brings me up to our next question here is, let's say a founder, he understands this product market fit and he has the data to kind of back it up as well. He's now going into a round, or he wants to raise capital, or she wants to raise capital. So can you kind of break down some of the steps, you would take to obviously get maybe one interview, if it's like, say, a Series A or a seed round, or, some of the things that you should do for a sequential round, like a Series A, B kind of thing?
Yeah. So, and this starts to touch on why I think the VC model is very broken. Because the problem is that there are tons and tons of ideas. There's vast amounts of opportunity out there. There's a lot of upside for VCs, but there's also a vast amount of downside. And VCs are generally just overwhelmed with opportunity, and they're doing their very, very best to filter through that. I don't think they're doing a good job of it, but they're doing their very, very best. But that causes problems for founders. This is part of the reason why most VCs want a warm intro. It's not because they're being dicks, it's because they just get too much stuff. An warm intro means that at least they understand they've got in the ecosystem, you're able to put some work in, that someone is willing to refer you. But the problem is it ends up in a situation where you have effectively gatekeepers, or you have well-connected people who have an unfair advantage. My first advice to anyone that's starting a company is starting to grow something, starting to get some idea of product market fit, starting to scale, is incubators and accelerators are your friends. They tend to act as gatekeepers to good deals. They tend to be great referral sources. I'm biased, obviously. I think the DMZ's programs are just brilliant for any stage of company. So big shout out to them. There are also some very, very good other programs. Your Velocity, amazing. Communitech. Techstars, Y-Combinator, they're great when you've got some degree of growth, some sales, getting towards product market fit. But fundamentally, what a lot of these programs are doing is acting as aggregators and then helping introduce startups to the right investors. Now, if you do not have those opportunities and you can't get in, it is possible to get cold intros. It is possible to get in front of them, but you've got to be super hacky. I personally do personalized videos. I create a video and I make it 45 seconds long, and I say, "Hi XYZ, I noticed you've invested in this company. We're doing this. This is our traction. I'd love to talk to you." And I send through a super, super, super short email that's literally like, "I'm reaching out to you because of this. we've got these metrics, this traction. Here's a 45-second video that shows you. And I get a great response rate on that. But frankly, VCs are generally generally gatekeepers to VCs and expectations to connect.
Yeah, and so for in recent I would say years, that there's been a lot of, I say, opening up for BIPOC communities to get investment in, and I think in the U.S. I think 1% of investment went to Black founders or something really, really odd, really low. And so what about those individuals who obviously don't come from networks or may not have the understanding of being a growth hacker or something like that? What can they do to kind of stand out? Because I know, even from personal experience, it is really, really tough.
It is insanely difficult. I want to come to the BIPOC question, and forgive me for being arrogant, but like I'm rich, white, male, elite educated, and that means I can get in front of most VCs. I can probably raise money, and that is just so wrong. Right? I'm actually not that great an entrepreneur, and I can say this with confidence because I work with a ton of amazing entrepreneurs, and I can tell you that they do not come from standard backgrounds. They do not come from Harvard MBA backgrounds. They are not, or in many cases, they do not look like me. And yet, because of pattern matching and because of the way in which I can connect with people and because of the way in which I am able to talk and present in front of VCs, I have this shockingly large unfair advantage. And it's shockingly large. And I see that the VC industry is trying to make moves to balance that. But at the end of the day, when you have an industry based around, do you have connections and can you talk the talk for 20 minutes in a pitch to me? Can you talk on my wavelength? And where the vast majority of VCs are also rich, white, elite educated men, it just biases. Cognitive biases mean that I appear to be a better entrepreneur. And I know this. I was working in an accelerator in New York 7 years ago. One of my friends had an amazing company that was selling hair extensions.
Okay.
Huge industry.
Right.
Huge untapped industry. Could not raise money. And it did not matter how many times she explained the opportunity to VCs. Now, 7 years ago, admittedly, you had VCs who understand, frankly, soccer mom suburban problems.
Yeah.
So they invest in soccer mom suburban problems. And I'm sorry, I wish I could offer, first of all, more praise to the VC industry. It's doing its best, but I think there's a lot more needs to do.
Yeah.
I wish we could offer opportunities or keys to help minorities, great entrepreneurs that come from backgrounds that are non-standard communities, but we are not there yet.
Yeah.
And that is terrible.
Yeah, this brings me to an interesting kind of point, because one of our earlier interviews with Jimmy Chen, who is the founder of Propel, he talked about this idea of how VCs tend not to invest in products and or maybe industries that favor helping lower class minorities, because they don't have the financial background to kind of support and continually purchase something. And so there was that cycle where he started realizing, and I think he had a background working with a few companies before, where a lot of these fintechs and or other companies that were helping minority groups tend not to get funded because the obvious biases, but also the financial implications that may be associated with those, which I found astonishing and absolutely not appropriate, because it's a product that they need, they want, the retention will likely be high. So a lot of this, value metrics that you're looking at, but biases towards financial stuff, I think really hinders a lot of progress.
I know you come from a finance background. I just see this as an enormous opportunity. It's like looking at the stock market and you're looking at one group of companies who are massively overvalued and another group of companies that no one seems to want to touch, that are massively undervalued. And you're like, why are you not investing in the great opportunities here? Well, we're not investing in the great opportunities because they don't pattern match towards the type of entrepreneurs we invest in, or we don't understand the opportunity, or we've got a bias against this opportunity, or we don't believe we have a bias against this opportunity, but actually, underneath that there is. And like, this is why it frustrates me so much. I'm fortunate not to be affected by this, but I am a capitalist, and I just see an opportunity where 5% of the world's population, rich, white, North American people, are getting a ton of money to build companies that are successful, and 95% of the world's best entrepreneurs are not. So let's go out and let's find that 95%.
Yeah.
And let's find them wherever they are, and let's help them, let's invest in them, and let's build 20 times as many great companies as we would have otherwise.
Yeah, no, very well said. And so if I were to be like one of those minority founders who are struggling to raise traditional VC capital, what are other kind of sources of funding and or financing I can potentially kind of seek out? Like what's available to me?
There is frankly not much. I think what it goes back to is bootstrapping, and what it goes back to is playing the VC game to your advantage. And this really is where we come in with Inate.ai. If you can strip a startup back to what is working and what is measurable, then you can start to remove cognitive biases from it. Once you stop saying, I like this startup because I think this founder is great, or I've got a feeling about this industry, or I understand this, and you can strip it back to what we were discussing earlier. Do they have product market fit? Are they growing well? Is their customer acquisition cost to customer lifetime value excellent? Once you can strip it back to that, then you can start saying, wow, this is a great company. Well, you know what? This is a super charismatic, really interesting founder that tells a great story, but whoa, behind that, this is not a company we want to invest in.
Right.
And that is why I'm so driven with Inate.ai to pull in data and analyze it in a way that anyone can use to show VCs like, hey, this is what you really want to look at. These are the things that tell you this is a great company. Right. And this is, why you should invest in me in this opportunity without the bias, without the cognitive bias, but with clear reasoning.
Yeah. So let's talk about Inate. So you just kind of mentioned kind of the value proposition about what you guys are trying to serve and solve. But how exactly are you kind of helping the founders like prepare the reports, and what kind of like things do you factor in terms of building a competent due diligence report? Because startups can come from multiple industries and they have like multiple different like metrics and stuff that an industry will be valued by.
So the first thing to say is I sort of fell into this. I really did not intend to start this as a company. But what I found was, whilst on paternity leave 2.5 years ago, getting to know my daughter and doing some consulting, I found that I was basically reusing the same analysis with almost every company I went to. And at a certain point in time, I was asking for the same data. And it really came down to, can I get an export of your Stripe data? Can I get your revenues? Can I get your invoices? Can I understand who's actually paying for this thing? When are they paying for it? How are they recurring? How are they coming back to your platform? How are they interacting with you? And so I had a ton of Excel templates that did that analysis. And there was one founder that I love, but used to annoy me because they continuously wanted just a slightly different graph, a slightly different color. And I thought, well, I can't give them the full Excel doc. But what if I just put this on a website for them? What if I just piped their data into something? And then once I was playing around with that, I thought, well, my Excel doc is huge, but it's the same basic functions I'm using. What if I simply implement this in code? What if I implement this in Python? And quite quickly, what I started to realize is you can access the vast majority of the data for a startup from API connections into the Stripe, the HubSpot, their bank account, your QuickBooks or Xero or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a constellation of products that most startups tend to use. And once you pull that in, suddenly you can do a vast amount of analysis that helps them understand what they're doing and that you can actually help them raise money from. And so it turned from being, Excel docs consulting into something I played around probably for the best part of a year, just messing around with startups' data from particularly the DMC Accelerator cohorts, helping them understand that. And then really it was Sen Satri, amazing guy, just came up to me one day and was like, Philip, what is this thing you're doing? And I was like, whoa, Sen, he gave me the data, I'm looking after it. And he was like, no, seriously, Philip, like these startups are talking about what you're showing them and how you're analyzing this data. can we have access? Because you know what? We want to help these startups. We're an accelerator. We need to understand what their needs are. We need to understand where they're going to and help them fundraise. And so for the past, 7 months now, we've been selling effectively an AI venture capital analyst. We've been selling it to accelerators and incubators as a means to help understand and track their startups. We now have 11 incubators, accelerators, and venture studios using this. The startups within those can access this analysis, and they can churn out effectively social capital's Magic 8 analysis. It's a reverse engineering of Magic 8 Ball from social capital, Tribe Capital's analysis, and Blink Capital's analysis. So suddenly you say, if you want to pitch a VC and you want to know what they're going to look at, here is the analysis.
Yeah, and so that's amazing. You kind of took like an existing ecosystem of applications that most startups use. Happens to be that a lot of startups are not combining the data and again aggregating it in a way where we can actually understand. And so you saw the opportunity, kind of ventured into it eventually, and built something out of it. That's amazing because I think so many startups have too many data silos, and then they just try to say, hey, pull the QuickBooks data and try to match it with the Salesforce data and see what combines and it's a nightmare trying to get analysis out of that.
Yes. And this comes back to what we were talking about earlier about dashboards. You don't want to be the company with 150 graphs on your dashboard because you've pulled a bit from HubSpot and you pull a little bit from Xero and a little bit from wherever. It's like, no. I want to get you as a company to a point where you can tell me your customer acquisition cost to customer lifetime value and whether you have product market fit. And that is it. Because when you tell me you have product market fit and you have a customer or CAC to LTV ratio of 1 to 3.5 or 1 to 4, we can grow you big and we can raise a ton of money.
Right.
Simple. Just distill it down to what you really need to know. And that's the hard part. And that's what we do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And could you kind of walk us through maybe a recent success story that you've had with the founder and or incubator?
I'm sorry, I actually can't. I'm privileged to work with a ton of startups. I've got to be very, very careful about confidentiality. At this point in time, I can say that we've got latest stats, 790 startups using most cases very, very simplistic objectives and key results. We've got about 58 startups at this point in time that we have full diligence reports for.
Okay.
And we're hand-holding. Of those 58, we tend to work with most of them to help them grow. We actually don't tend to send them through to VCs because we want to be highly curated. And we've got 6 that we're walking through fundraising processes for at this point in time.
Yeah.
So it really is like a wide net, but we go to a VC or we go to a venture debt firm and we say, here is a great company for these reasons, and here's their due diligence report, and this is why you should be interested. And that's the value prop. We're not there to say we have 800 startups and you should look at all of them because that's but yeah, I can say we've got some amazing companies in there, all the way through from deep tech through to large e-com companies, through to marketplaces that I can't talk about.
No, that's cool. That's cool. It's as long as we understand, it's obviously going to be a funnel. Not all startups get VC funding, which makes sense because the metrics and drivers don't make, they're not valuable sometimes. And you realize the business model may not work. So I love how you guys are taking it bit by bit in terms of, at the end of the funnel, you have the companies that, fit the bill of what a VC is typically looking for, makes their life easier. And as a result, the whole funding process it's much easier, right? So you guys are working on a great tool, and wish more individuals in our industry will obviously through the podcast hear about you guys, but in general expand the business. And so that kind of wraps up like the bulk of the podcast in terms of the questions that what we always love ending off with is a little quick fire round. So
you're not going to ask me about pineapples and pizza, right?
Oh yes, I have to. That's one of our standard questions that we ask all of our guests. but we'll save that for number 5. But first, so let's go. It's going to be 5 questions, and the first question is, what's your favorite book of all time?
Oh, super simple. 0 to 1.
Oh,
Peter Thiel.
that's my
I'm
favorite book
sorry,
too.
I cannot endorse his politics these days. Gone super mad, but
Yeah.
like, whoa! In terms of something that is, we're talking Wittgenstein, or Principia Mathematica type levels of, whoa, my God,
Yeah.
this is just groundbreaking. Amazing book.
Yeah, he breaks it down so well, and that's kind of the book that kind of really launched me in terms of some of the growth hacks and all that other stuff, because you
Yes.
understand how to grow and a real business, a tangible business. It's an awesome book, and I recommend anyone read that.
Highly recommend it.
So, a company outside of your own that you're most excited about?
Oh, that's a tough one. Okay. Ecom, Silk and Snow. I have a
Okay.
good night's sleep now because of Silk and Snow mattresses and stuff. I think they're brilliant. They're an amazing product. Um, craziest founder I've worked with, Cybernetic, Joe
Okay.
freaking amazing. What a great deep tech cybersecurity company. And then, the deal that you're not going to get if you're a VC, but you really need to be in on, XIX 3D. I spoke about, like, I am not a great founder. I
Yeah.
know amazing founders. Tiago from XIX 3D is such an amazing founder, so completely not cut from my cloth, so willing to learn, moves, found an amazing opportunity. Just very, very quickly, he used to do car wraps. He wrapped the car for Dead Mouse, and found this opportunity that wrap shops need software to help sell this. Okay, nice, small niche, but that leads into vans, it leads into Mercedes, BMW, it leads into rims, it leads into the entire design of your car on a visual thing. And I think he is disrupting a huge industry, not just wrapping cars, but every single step of buying your car. I love working with him, and I think it's an amazing
product. Oh, that's awesome. And I constantly hear these stories. Sometimes the less sexy industry is usually when you, one, more profitable, and two, scale a lot faster because there's a lot less barriers.
Absolutely. And particularly when you deeply understand it, like Tiago does. And frankly, when nobody else does. Like, there's very, very few car wrap people like, oh, I should start a tech company.
Yeah.
Well, suddenly you have very few competitors and a huge opportunity. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I'll definitely take a look at his company. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, God. Shut up, Philip.
No, that's fair. It's fair. That's fair.
No. There's the moments where you realize, and particularly when I think about my daughter, it's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about me. It's not about what I can do. It's about my team.
Yeah.
It's about the people. It's about how I manage. It's about how I enable other people. So I'm sort of joking about that, but yeah, shut up. Like, stop trying to do things yourself, Philip.
Mm-hmm.
Like, other people are where the magic happens.
Yeah. And that kind of falls up into my next question here. What's the meaning and value to you of a strong network?
Being a founder is so tough. It's tough in so many different ways. And I think it just leads to sort of cognitive dissonance where you always have to be selling, you always have to be positive, like everything's got to be amazing. And just the ability to talk to other founders and be able to say, whoa, last week was shit.
Yeah.
Or, wow, it's been such a rough few months. Because it's not something you can do with your team.
Yeah, for sure.
You can't go to your VP of product and be like, wow, it really sucks to fundraise and I'm so stressed. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Friends, family don't understand the dedication and the struggle and the strife, but other founders do. And that for me is the real thing. It's knowing that this is a tough path to walk and that there are other great founders I can talk openly with about this, because frankly, it's a unique world.
Yeah, for sure. And last but not least, saving the best for last, do you like pineapple on your pizza?
I absolutely refuse to answer that question. I'm going to flip it back to you for all my Nigerian colleagues because I'm super excited by my dinner tonight. Do I have eba or pounded yam with my soup? I'm an eba guy.
Yeah.
I had the great fortune of living for a year in Nigeria. I love my okra soup. I love egusi soup. I'm having egusi with some momo tonight with eba.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I feel you. I'm kind of the same way. Let's keep fruit off pizza, but um, some people like it. I mean, like my co-host shares who could make it today, he loves it. So I mean, we bond over it sometimes. We bond over it sometimes. Yeah, we have
Slap
to.
him for me, please.
Yeah,
It's just wrong.
yeah. I don't know. It's funny stories. I even went to Italy and we pulled a prank on a shop, saying could we order pineapple and pizza, and the guy was really mad at us, to say the least. So we definitely didn't end up going to that shop, but we just learned our lesson, saying that kind of tells you why fruit doesn't belong on pizza. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But you know what? Having denigrated deep dish Chicago style pizza for so long, you know what? Sometimes you go local and you find that something's been taken and it has
yeah,
been reinvented, and it is great. But
yeah,
I think it's also great to understand, where something comes from and what the value is.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, Philip, that kind of wraps up the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on. This was an amazing chat. Learned a lot about what you're doing. Your kind of history in terms of tech and how you've come today and build out Inate. Really hoping you guys kind of continue to grow. Really, pitching this because a lot of founders need this, and you guys are hitting on a key problem that a lot of individuals cannot solve early on, at least, right? So kudos to you. And where can somebody find you in terms of like website, online,
Yep.
or whatever it may
So
be?
our website is Inate.ai, Inate.ai, because I wanted 5 letters and not an extra N in there. And that's it. We work with a select number of incubators and accelerators at this point in time, and with select startups. Please feel free to reach out via that website. But yes, we are select.
All right, awesome.